6 weeks of online IndyCar racing ended in dramatic fashion at Indianapolis of all places, with Formula One star Lando Norris at the centre of all the controversy, particularly for his incident with Simon Pagenaud. I'm Glenn Freeman, and I've got Jack Benyon and Scott Mitchell here to run the rule over everything that happened. And Jack, let's crack straight into it, because Norris v Pagenaud was the big story afterwards. Lando obviously made quite a risky move at turn 2 that Pagenaud and Graham Rahal and some of the other IndyCar drivers weren't happy with. Pagenaud goes out into the pits, comes back out, seems to wait for Lando and take him out. What did you make of everything? Did Pagenaud have a fair reason to feel aggrieved with what Lando did?
I think for me, Lando probably misjudged it a little bit in the sense that he was on fresh tyres. He was clearly a lot quicker than the two drivers in front of him, and he made a bold move. He got alongside just after turn 1 and then dived down the inside of turn 2 when he was alongside. And, Graham Rahal, is a little bit of confusion there whether Lando's system was lagging a little bit, and that's what caused, Graham Rahal to move up the track into Simon Pagenaud and take him out. So, for me, I can see that, Lando was trying to fight a load of drivers who'd, taken fresh tyres on the previous stop and were a little bit further down the top 10, but likely would have come through the order. So I think there was a little bit of pressure there from Lando, and he'd also seen how quick Will Power had been in fresh air earlier in the race. I can see why he made the move and why at the time he probably thought it was necessary, but in hindsight he had the fresher tyres and he was going to make that move eventually anyway, and he didn't need to really take it 3 wide at that point.
I would just add to that the move when he does make it 3 wide, it's not like he appears at the last minute or only gets half a car inside or anything like that. He's fully alongside, and I accept why there might be a little bit of irritation from an established IndyCar driver with that idea of, you don't make overtakes there. I don't think it's necessarily the most heinous of crimes to catch someone out by doing a legitimate overtake at a place where you wouldn't just because you wouldn't normally overtake there. And I think that while it's very valid what Jack says about maybe he could have waited and just done the move at a safer place, but the move was on and he didn't do it in a reckless way, I don't think. And to me, that's the definition of a racing incident. So I don't think there is a proper controversy with the role that Lando played in it. The onus is very much on how Pagenaud reacted, because even if Lando was in the wrong, the way Pagenaud reacted is totally unbecoming of a series regular, a champion, and someone of his pedigree.
And that's kind of taken the question of what Lando did became secondary, because all the focus was on Pagenaud's retaliation, which you wouldn't expect from someone that experienced. Then that took Norris out of the battle for the win, and it looked like another driver with Formula One in his CV was going to win it, and that was Marcus Ericsson, but he gets taken out at turn 4 by Pato O'Ward, and they argued about this, and O'Ward felt that he should have been left space. And I'm not even going to throw this one to you guys, because if you watch the replays, he wasn't in there at all. He just drives into the back of Ericsson. So in terms of our verdict on that one, I have to lay all the blame at O'Ward's door, even though he felt he gave Ericsson space earlier and wanted some space there, but he had no right to it. So then we get to the run to the line, Jack, and Santino Ferrucci is trying to get a run on Oliver Askew for the win, and I was going to say he appears to drive into him. He doesn't appear to drive into him. He just steers into him, and found it hilarious at the time. And then by the time he was interviewed on TV, it looked like someone had a word in his ear and said, you should look apologetic for that and like you didn't mean it. But what was Santino thinking?
You can, if you watch the slow-mo replay back, you can see Santino pull his left hand down and turn the wheel left. So, there's not really anything to discuss there. He's literally taken Oliver Askew out of the race win. And the really difficult thing to understand for me is that Ferrucci's got a run. There's a good chance Ferrucci could have won that race if he'd have just stayed where he was. But for some unbeknown reason, he just turned down into Askew and then started laughing. And for me, the apology is really empty, because his reaction to that is, in my personal opinion, a bit unforgivable, really. It's turning things into a bit of a mockery, because drivers aren't taking things seriously and other drivers are.
Now, Scott, Jack mentioned there that this isn't a great look for IndyCar or for online racing. Do you think that, some people have felt that this is just a game, and that appeared to be Ferrucci's attitude as well? He said it's just a game, it's just a video game. Why is everyone so upset about it? Is that a valid position, or is the way that US racing has positioned its alternatives online compared to the way Formula One has done it, has IndyCar kind of set itself up for this because it took it so seriously?
The reason these things are so popular is because people want to see some competition. And just because it's not taking place in the real world doesn't mean this racing's not real. So you can have hard, fair, authentic, honest racing and actual competition. That's why people like it. I think it's utterly disrespectful to the discipline and to all of the other people taking part. You know, it's esports for a reason, and some people can argue that this is just sim racing and not proper esports, but there is a proper sporting element involved, and the likes of Pagenaud and especially Ferrucci, they don't just turn a blind eye to it. They basically insult the sporting integrity of the competition, because it is still a competition at the end of the day.
The fact is, these drivers, they are entitled to a level of privacy, and they should be able to have fun and enjoy things. But at the same time, they're representing a team behind them, sponsors. The teams themselves. Lando mentioned this very eloquently in his kind of summary just after he'd spoken to Simon Pagenaud after the race, and said that there's people who could have been spending time with their families at home and have put massive effort into this. And Simon Pagenaud is one of them. He's one of them who came out and said, "I've been doing 5 hours a day on the sim." So for him to go out and then, deliberately wreck someone else's day, he's not just wrecking Lando Norris's day, he's ruined the team that Lando's got behind him working with his engineers. And that's not just Lando being being accused of a prima donna or something like that. All of the guys are using engineers, and they've all spoken of the benefit, not only of keeping their engineers sort of match fit and doing things, but also giving them something to do on a period where they wouldn't be racing either. It's not just the drivers. And, they're being made to look stupid by a few real life drivers who've been parachuted into a championship, and thrown their toys out the pram and got upset about something that's happened to them on the track.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's a game when these guys are just playing. I think Joseph Newgarden said, on Tuesday night, I'm going to be playing Forza again with my buddies. That's when it's a game, when it's a fully sanctioned alternative that all the teams and sponsors and TV are behind. It's a little bit more than a game for them. But anyway, IndyCar's 6 weeks of madness is over now. Viewers, make sure you go and check out therace.com because there's so much coverage around this. Let us know what you think of all the key incidents that happened in IndyCar's final race at Indianapolis. And let us know what you've made of all these virtual alternatives as well. Have you got into it? Will you be following it in the future? Or are you glad, in IndyCar's case, that it's over?